Just about a week into free agency, the Philadelphia Eagles have gone out and already made a bunch of different moves, and it has been a much more successful period than I think a lot of people expected, as the Eagles have found ways to go out and keep a lot of the key players that many people thought they were going to lose, while also adding several new additions with high upside at a very low cost. But however, the Eagles may not be done making moves just yet, as they have several holes to fill on the roster at multiple positions, and there's several players that would make perfect sense for the Eagles to go and target that are still remaining in free agency. And we're going to talk all about that in this video today, but before we do that, make sure you go and subscribe to the channel for more consistent Philadelphia Eagles and NFL content coming throughout the entire offseason. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Now with that being said, let's get into the video. So at this point in the offseason, one of the Eagles' biggest positions of need is the safety position, and obviously there's one guy that would make perfect sense to fill that need, and that guy is CJ Gardner-Johnson. As you know, obviously him playing for the Eagles for the past season, he had a lot of success in that year, in his first year switching from cornerback to safety, and he's still one of the most talented players left on the free agent market, and obviously that's the guy that all Eagles fans want to bring back. He was probably the Eagles' #1 priority in free agency heading into that period. Now about a weekend, we still haven't been able to get an answer on whether CJ Gardner-Johnson will be returning to the team, because the situation has been really interesting. Obviously, you know, CJ Gardner-Johnson put out a tweet not too long ago basically alluding to the fact that his market has not been as good as he thought it was going to be, so that's probably why you see the situation dragging out as long as it has. He's been on social media doing all sorts of stuff, changing his profile picture to stuff of him in Eagles gear, then a black screen, deleting a bunch of tweets. He's kind of chilled out with that over the past day or so now, and it really has become one of the more interesting situations to monitor as NFL free agency progresses. But assuming CJ Gardner-Johnson isn't going to get paid top dollar like he thought he was going to heading into the free agency period, I think it makes perfect sense for him to come back to the Philadelphia Eagles, because what he should do at that point, if he still wants to get paid at some point, is come back to the team on a 1 or 2 year deal, build up his value at the safety position, prove that he's worth big money, go back out on the open market and get paid. But if you're going to sign a 1 to 2 year deal in free agency to help try to build up your value, what better team to do that with than the Philadelphia Eagles? They obviously have an extremely talented secondary, players you're familiar with, coaches you're familiar with. Why not, if you're CJ Gardner-Johnson, don't you come back to the Philadelphia Eagles? So I think that it's pretty realistic, even though the situation has gone on way longer than expected, and I'm sure he's receiving interest from multiple other teams. I still think it's a very realistic possibility that CJ Gardner-Johnson ends up back with the Philadelphia Eagles next season, and I'm really hoping that ends up happening as well. But let's assume that he doesn't sign a deal with the Eagles, and the Eagles have to find an answer at the safety position somewhere else. Well, in that case, what are some of the other potential options for the Eagles at that position? Well, the first and probably most exciting option, should CJ not return for the Eagles, is Kevin Byard, the safety from the Tennessee Titans, as a report has come out recently saying that Kevin Byard could be cut by the Titans to save cap space if he refuses to take a pay cut, which makes a lot of sense, as it looks like the Titans are a team that are headed for a rebuild, but Kevin Byard is still playing at an extremely high level. Just last season in 2022, he had 108 tackles and 4 interceptions, and Kevin Byard is a guy that's constantly able to find ways to take the football away, and he's a ball hawk. He has 5 years of 4+ interceptions, which is extremely impressive, and in his 7-year career, he has a total of 27 interceptions along with 63 passes defensed, and he's allowed a 75.2 passer rating when targeted, and he also has 2 All-Pro selections. Shout out to Victor Williams on Twitter for pulling all these stats up. But Kevin Byard now is 29 years old, and he showed no signs of regression, and he's still one of the NFL's best safeties. And if CJ were to leave the Eagles, I think Kevin Byard would be a great option. He's still super good, and I think he'd be a great fit in Philadelphia. But a potential problem the Eagles could run into is being able to pay Byard the money that he wants, because the report said that the Titans could cut Byard if he refuses to take a pay cut, which it's being reported that Kevin Byard is refusing to do that. He does not want to take a pay cut, and that's why you see the situation playing out the way it is. And, you know, Kevin Byard is one of the higher paid safeties in the league. He was set to make $13.6 million in 2023, and he carried a $19.6 million cap hit. Now, assume that the Titans, you know, the report's saying that they're going to cut him if he refuses. They could also look into potentially trading him, because I'm sure he's a guy that's going to garner a lot of value from a lot of other teams, and it would also save them more cap space to trade him post June 1st than to cut him. So maybe that's something they would look into. If that's the case, there is no shot that the Eagles do that. There's no chance that they're able to take on the salary that he carries next season. Now, if he's cut, the Eagles have a little bit more of a chance, but then again, Kevin Byard did say that he does not want to take a pay cut, so he'd probably be looking for whatever other team wants to go out and sign him for a contract very similar to the one that he was on in Tennessee, and he wants probably around the same salary at $13 million or around there. And I think that'd be really difficult for the Eagles to get done, especially since I think CJ Gardner-Johnson, his value is probably a little bit lower than $13 million per season, and he's a lot younger than Kevin Byard. He's 25, Kevin Byard is 29, so would the Eagles want to go out there and pay Kevin Byard a salary of $13 million per season if they aren't able to bring back CJ for probably a cheaper price? I don't think so. So unfortunately, as much as I like Kevin Byard, as much as I think he's a great player, I don't see this happening should CJ Gardner-Johnson not be back with the team. Obviously, you never know, but I just don't see it as the most realistic possibility. Now, a more realistic option for the Eagles at that safety position is a player that Eagles fans are very familiar with, and that player is Jalen Mills. As just yesterday, he was cut by the New England Patriots so they could save $5 million in cap space, which makes a reunion between Jalen Mills and the Philadelphia Eagles very possible. And obviously, Jalen Mills is a player who's played corner for pretty much his entire career, and he's had his good and bad moments at that position, but that's arguably not his natural position, as in college, Jalen Mills played safety quite a bit, and in 1 year with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2020, his last season with the team, he played safety, and he arguably had his best year in the NFL, as he had 74 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 interception. And it seems like Jalen Mills might want to go back to playing that safety position, as he recently tweeted out a couple things. One saying, "You'll really know I'm a hybrid, right?" And another saying, "You'll know I really play safety, right?" So it seems like, whatever team signs him, he's letting them know that, hey, I can play multiple positions. I'd like to play safety, but if not, I can play corner as well. Jalen Mills is a versatile player. He can play any position in the secondary, and I'm sure he'd be open to return to Philadelphia. His nickname's still the Green Goblin. He still has the green hair. He obviously won a Super Bowl with the team, and I'm sure he enjoyed his time here. You see someone like Jennifer Slade, Darius Slay's wife, going out and recruiting him back to the team. And another reason why I think it would be a good option for the Eagles to go and get him is because he'd be a much cheaper option than a guy like CJ Gardner-Johnson, should they not be able to get him back, or a guy like Kevin Byard. Jalen Mills probably would not cost you all that much money, and again, like I said, his versatility would be huge. His ability to play the safety position or the corner position, whatever the Eagles need him to do, he can do it. And he's also great in the red zone. Even when he was in Philadelphia and he was consistently, getting beat on the double move, when he was playing the cornerback position and Eagles fans were, kind of roasting him for it, he was still a very good red zone corner. And Jalen Mills also brings a lot of energy, which is something obviously, Philadelphia fans love. And this is also interesting because even if CJ Gardner-Johnson does re-sign with the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Mills could still be a target for the Eagles to go get at that other safety position, as obviously they lost Marcus Epps to the Raiders. And, some people say Reed Blankenship should, get a chance to start at that other safety position. And I don't necessarily disagree with that because I like Reed Blankenship, but no one knows how the Eagles feel about him, and no one knows if they're confident enough in him to go out and start games and play heavy snaps for the course of an entire season for the Eagles. So if they aren't confident in him and they're also able to get CJ Gardner-Johnson back, I still think Jalen Mills would be a good option at that other safety position. And a CJ Gardner-Johnson and Jalen Mills duo at safety would just, the energy would absolutely just be unmatched. And I think I'd really like to see that. And, I liked Jalen Mills when he was here. He had his bad moments, but I do think he also had plenty of good moments, and I liked what he brought to the team. And although I don't think he's an elite player or anything like that, I do think he's a serviceable option at safety should they not be able to get Gardner-Johnson back, or at that other safety position, even if they do get him back. So we'll see what happens there, but there's also some other solid options for the Eagles at that safety position that are still out there on the free agent market. One of them being John Johnson III. In 2022, he had 101 tackles, 70 solo tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception. And he's a good player through the course of his career with the Rams and the Browns. He's been a pretty consistent player. He does have his flaws. He has issues with missing tackles, and he's not the greatest guy in coverage all the time, but he's still a good player and a very serviceable option, and he would be cheap. He would be a cheap addition for the Eagles should they not be able to get CJ Gardner-Johnson back. And another guy for them to look at is Adrian Amos. In 2022, he had 102 tackles, a sack, and an interception, and he's also a very solid option as well. I think any of these guys could be a good option for the Eagles to take a look at to try to fill that hole. And another big position in need for the Eagles on the defensive side of the ball is the linebacker position, and there are still several guys out out there in free agency that would make a lot of sense for the Eagles to go get. Number one is Bobby Wagner, and he's a guy that I've talked about multiple times on this channel before, but Bobby Wagner's obviously still one of the better linebackers in the NFL. He was an all-pro linebacker last year in his first year with the LA Rams after spending the entirety of his career prior to that with the Seattle Seahawks. He's a 9-time all-pro selection, and he obviously has a lot of experience, and he's worth a decent amount of money, but he also has said in the past that he just wants to win. So could he go out here and maybe sign a deal with the Philadelphia Eagles for a little bit less than his market value to try to win the Super Bowl? As obviously the Eagles are a team that has a legitimate shot of doing that. I think that that's a realistic possibility, and I think Bobby Wagner would be a great addition to this team, and I also think he could be a mentor to Nakobe Dean, who the Eagles are relying on to step up this season as well. So I think Bobby Wagner is a name to keep your eye on as free agency continues to progress for the Eagles. And another guy the Eagles could look at that linebacker position is Myles Jack, and he was a guy that's just cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers not too long ago, and last year in his first year with the Steelers he was pretty solid. He was a free agent pickup for them in 2022, and he started off pretty hot, and he was making his impact felt, but down the stretch of the season, he was dealing with some injury issues, and that limited his production. So he had an alright season. He had 101 combined tackles, which is definitely respectable. The linebacker position, that's not super elite, but it's also not bad. I think he's a guy that the Eagles could go out, they could get for cheap, and he would be a serviceable starter next to Nakobe Dean. He's consistently been a good player throughout his entire career. You know, with the Jaguars, he was a very good player. So I think he's a player that the Eagles could consider, and hopefully if the Eagles were to go out and get him, he wouldn't deal with very many injuries. He'd stay healthy and he'd be able to have a good impact. And then the last guy I want to talk about for the Eagles at the linebacker position is Denzel Perryman. And he's a guy who, in 2021 with the Raiders, he had a breakout season. He was one of the best linebackers in the league that year. He had 154 tackles, and he made a Pro Bowl. And he's a guy that's a super hard hitter as well. So he definitely makes his impact felt. And, 2021 was really a great year for him. But then 2022, he took a step back because he was limited by injuries. He missed 5 games during the course of the regular season, and he only had 83 tackles. So he's a guy that I think, if the Eagles are able to get him for cheap, he would be a great addition because, he kind of would fit the theme of what the Eagles have been doing this offseason with some of their new additions, as he would be low risk if they're able to get him for cheap, and very high reward, as obviously we've seen what he's capable of in 2021. Now, there's other teams with interest in him, including the Titans and the Texans, but if the Eagles are somehow able to find a way to go get him for a cheap price, now obviously I don't know what his market value would be. I think it's hard to gauge because 2021 was so great, in 2022 he was limited by injuries, but if the Eagles can get him for cheap, I think he would be a fantastic addition. And those are just a few names at that linebacker position. There are plenty of other guys still available on the free agent market. The Eagles just have to find a way to go out and get a serviceable starter at that position. And there's plenty of other players at other positions that I could see the Eagles go out and making a play for as well, but those are just a few of the names that I either have seen mentioned along with the Eagles, or I think that the Eagles should potentially consider going out and trying to get at some of the biggest positions of need on that Eagles defense. That's pretty much all I got for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Who out of these guys do you think the Eagles could still go out and get in free agency? If you want to watch more Philadelphia Eagles content, you can go watch this video right here. Also, drop a like on this video to help push it out to other people and support the channel. Also, subscribe if you did enjoy this video and want to see more videos just like it. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this video, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.